Hi, everyone, and welcome to the presentation of Service Learning, Social and Emotional Learning, and the Positive Impact on Student Performance. My name is Bushra Al-Haq. I'm a director with We Schools, focusing on AP with We Service for the past couple of years. I'm joined by the amazing Sarah and Joelle, who have been leading Service Learning with We Schools for a while, so they're going to introduce themselves now.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Grateful to be here with you today. I'm the director of the We Schools program across the U.S., and I work with teachers and school districts across the U.S. to bring service learning alive in classrooms and after-school clubs and in leadership groups.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joelle, and I'm the manager of the We Schools program. And like Sarah, I get the pleasure of working with educators and our educational partners to bring service learning to life.
Thank you. We're very excited that you have joined us today because we're talking about that gap between service learning and social emotional learning. And our goal here is for you to really see how they are connected together. So today we're going to showcase the importance of service learning to student achievement, understand the importance of social and emotional learning for student success, highlight the relationship between service learning and social and emotional learning, hopefully leaving you with an understanding that by your participation in AP with We Service, you are making that difference in your students' social and emotional learning. So we want to get started by showcasing a video to you that really summarizes for us that foundation of how the partnership between service learning and social emotional learning are together.
Service learning is an exciting area, and it's already had, I think, major effects on youth around the world. But it has so much more potential to build social emotional skills that can lead people to flourish and have better well-being across their lifespans. And I think a next goal for service learning is to really embed social emotional learning in a way that deepens its work.
We sometimes get thinking that, well, resilience is something that's kind of inside, just waiting to well up. But actually, if you look at the research and you look at the clinical work that people are doing, what they're discovering is it's about the triggers. It's about the resources that we have around us. If we want children to develop resilience, then we really need to give them genuine opportunities to make a contribution back to their communities, their families, and their schools. And that's really what it is about service learning that makes it such a rich opportunity for children to develop resilience, as well as make that contribution and find the things that are going to make them strong as individuals now and into the future.
The changes that engagement with meaningful dialogue, meaningful work, the changes that creates in the brain, particularly in the adolescent brain as it's under construction, is absolutely profound. Service learning optimizes the opportunity for adolescent brain development. Why do I think that? Because the brain is affected by the experience and the environment. Teachers have been, and it's not been emphasized enough, that the power of their relationship and connection with students, particularly the harder to engage students, literally is sculpting their brain.
So here we are at a very exciting point in history. We have the We program on the one hand that has been engaging youth and inspiring them to do good for the world. And on the other hand, we have the field of social and emotional learning, which has decades of research showing that you can teach these social and emotional skills like social awareness and self-management. And we're bringing them together for the very first time to be able to create pioneering work to help make a difference in the world and promote the well-being of youth.
Great. So we hope you saw that, and I hope you were able to see the connection that we have really looked at for service learning and social emotional learning. This is one of our favorite quotes in the grounding of our programming is, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I will learn. It's really key for us to bring students into ownership of their learning and to feel like they are part of it and that they are in charge of it. A little bit of overview of what we'll be covering in this presentation. We'll do a little dive into service learning just so we all understand what we are participating in with AP with We Service. We'll look at combining service learning and social and emotional learning. But most importantly, we'll really be looking at AP with We Service learning examples to showcase to you how SEL is developed along the way in your project examples. And then at the end, we'll look at how can we use service learning virtually to support social and emotional learning. As we know, it's been a year, this past school year, and so we really want to support all those educators that are working virtually or hybrid or remote or full face-to-face, whatever combination you have, there's a solution for you to bring service learning into the classroom. So first we'll start with service learning, and what I really want to look at is the definition is a teaching and learning strategy that integrates meaningful community service with instruction and reflection to enrich the learning experience, teach civic responsibility, and strengthen communities. The best thing I like to say is that service learning is really bringing the community into the classroom and the classroom into the community so that students can really connect their curriculum, their content, the teaching that you're doing to practical real world examples and see how it's all one and the same. Service learning develops positive youth development and well-being. It's an approach which students get to explore problems in their school or community, develop plans to solve them, and take action. Service learning can help young people find purpose, which leads to students having increased civic engagement and deepening their learning in course curriculum. What's really important with service learning is that, and Sarah will probably dive into this a bit later, but it's the connection that service learning is not only about the action, but it's really about the intention and the why behind certain issues are prevalent in our local communities or global communities, and for students to understand that and create purpose from it. It's a core component of psychological well-being. It's part of one's search for meaning, involves a desire to contribute to the world in a way that is larger than oneself. So where students can really connect impact to action. The outcomes of service learning are academic achievement, workplace readiness, civic engagement, improving well-being. We've looked at these through years of research and conducted to see where we can improve students' success. The theory of change for service learning is, remove barriers to youth success, educate and empower youth, which will transform youth and communities, which will bring out a societal change for them. Now we're going to dive into service learning and social and emotional learning, and Sarah's going to help me out with this part.
Great, thanks, Bushra. So the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, known as CASEL, has done a lot of research in the field of SEL and SEL and service learning, and they've identified these there are five core competencies and SEL skills that are fostered specifically through service learning. So they're empathy, and that really is built through the inquiry and looking into why a social issue exists. Communication and collaboration, which is really built for students as they are creating their action plan and seeing through their action plan. Perseverance and problem solving. We often know that anytime a student is approaching a project, they're gonna experience challenges along the way, and they'll need to do some perseverance depending on what comes up. CASEL has really done so much research on the connection between SEL and service learning that if this is a particular area that you're interested to learn more about, we wanted to include a link there so you can check it out. There is a lot of really great research studies and references to materials that go much deeper into this particular content. So we encourage you to check it out if you're interested.
Perfect. And what we really wanted to share as well is that social and emotional learning is actually grounded in this framework by CASEL, the circles that you can see and the icons. It's really looking about knowledge, attitude, and skills that individuals, whether they're children or adults, need in order to have successful and secure learning in life at any point in time. So with this, they have this wheel framework, which actually looks at 5 key competencies. So the ones that Sarah was sharing was 5 key skills. We're looking at the 5 key competencies of social and emotional learning. In the red and orange, you'll see that these are pertaining to self. So self-awareness, being aware of our own emotions, our strengths, our limitations, our growth. Self-management is looking at regulation, managing our goals, our time, our self-control. The blue is actually looking at the social domain, so social awareness, perspective of others, and how do we show empathy towards ourselves and others. Ourself is really important here too, but how do we walk in other people's shoes? Relationship skills is being able to build and maintain warm and healthy relationships. And lastly, we have responsible decision making, which is on its own because it brings together all of the other skills in a way that helps children and adults make responsible decisions that are always about caring for oneself and others. So it's those values that we want to instill. What's important with this framework that I do want to point out is that these 5 interrelated competencies are grounded in context. So the outer circles that you're looking at are what are really important as well. So there's a classroom curriculum instruction context, there's a school climate, there's a family and community context that involves the learning. What's important is that social and emotional learning, we know, is not done in isolation. And so why that context matters is that it impacts how one functions and how one is able to learn, and one's social and emotional learning is developed through those skills together. We're going to actually jump into examples and getting into really showing you how AP with WeService impacts all this. So I'm going to pass it over to Sarah.
Great, thanks, Bushra. So the example we're going to look at with this AP with WeService project is one for AP Comparative Government and Politics. And really, the students' focus for this project was to develop an expo focused on hunger and homelessness. And it's where they started first researching a bunch of different organizations within their community that actually support food insecurity and homelessness. And they developed a service project, which was this expo, to support various projects, ranging from a card writing project to support children in hospitals, to organizing a food drive. They even did some material resource collection of collecting blankets and toys for a local shelter. So we also included, for reference, a blended learning alternative. And one of the ways that we know that where students might have done an in-person expo in the past, we know that virtual expos, doing different breakout rooms, and students traveling through different breakout rooms, or any participants going through different breakout rooms to learn about these different areas, work really, really well in a hybrid or a virtual learning environment. So we're going to take this example and we're going to run it through our 4 steps AP with We service learning process, and through it understand more about how SEL context is woven throughout. So when we look at our 4 steps of the AP with We service learning process, so often what teachers and students, and even school administrators for that matter, are most familiar with are steps 2 and 3. Really about what type of service do we want to do, and then let's go out and do it. And so often it's what we hear when we're hearing about required service hours for students to graduate, or even some schools or some districts have them as a requirement for students to conduct each year. What's really important though is where the SEL social and emotional skills really are rooted, and where that deep learning happens is really in steps 1 and 4, which so often in our service learning process are not the focus, but really need to be the focus. So for example, when we start with step 1 of this process, the investigation and learn, the inquiry into why a major critical social issue exists is really important. And that's where we begin to foster those SEL skills. And step 4, which is after the action has been taken and conducted, how are we reflecting? How are we celebrating on the impacts or the outcomes that project has actually had? So now we're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're going to go step by step through our WeSchools, our AP with We service learning process to see where those SEL skills and competencies are cultivated and how they're cultivated. So in step 1, when we investigate and learn, so starting with questions like, for this example, for this expo example, understanding the root cause of food insecurity and homelessness. So really going into questions like, what does hunger look like in your local community? Or what does food insecurity look like in your local community? Or what does homelessness look like in your local community? We know in many schools across the US, there's a large or a existing homeless population of students that are actually going to school. What's that look like? Looking at things like, how do you think government policy and structure affects food insecurity? What do we think are the causes of it? And how do we think it shows up in our day-to-day? Just by starting with the inquiry, we know that the skills that are fostered, the competencies that are fostered that relate to SEL are things like empathy and communication and self-awareness. And not only self-awareness, but how are we part of a larger community and global community? And that is really where our social awareness, or where a student's social awareness begins to be developed as part of the service process. In step 2, we're really looking at action planning. So in this example, where students have developed an expo, and in that expo, they are taking action on food insecurity and homelessness. There are actually a few different ways through that expo that they're taking action. They're doing awareness raising, they're volunteering, they're doing resource collection. And so as part of step 2, we also see that this is where students would do their goal setting, where they would say they could apply a SMART goals perspective to measure their impact. They would divide their roles and responsibilities into a few different it's where they would take their roles and responsibilities and divide those tasks equally among themselves or members in their group. And really, we know this SEL skills and competencies that are fostered in step 2 would be things like communication and problem solving and collaboration. But there continues to be this sense of social awareness, because while a student or students might be doing a project, they have to understand how that project is going to, and all of its intersectionality with all of the community partners or global partners that are involved in it. In step 3, the taking action, we know that this is really where the students are getting out there and they're taking action. And when we see, okay, so what type of SEL skills would be fostered in the actual taking action component? Well, we know things like perseverance and responsible decision making. There's going to be decision points along the way when they're actually out there doing the project. And we also know it's where a student is going to have to do some of that self-management, and they're going to have to do a lot of communication as part of seeing that project through. And then finally, we have our reflection and celebration point. So this is step 4. This is the final part of the process. So this is where students would ask or be asked, how'd you do with your goal of this project? What types of challenges did you run into? Did you have the type of impacts that you had initially set out to have in step 2 of this process? Did you meet those impacts? How do you feel about completing this project and the impacts that you created as part of this project? What's your most important takeaway? These reflective questions actually support things like empathy and self-awareness and social awareness. But step 4 is also that really important celebration piece. It's where a student is able to celebrate and share the success that he or she had through all of their hard work. And again, this is important from a communication perspective of being able to foster that skill and that competency. So we know that implementing SEL and service learning together, we know that it results in even better, more positive outcomes for positive youth development, rather than just an SEL program alone, which I would imagine for many of you, you do have SEL programs currently that are being adopted either by your school district or by your school. But I think what's also really a really interesting learning here is that the We Schools program and the AP with We service program actually draws from a combination of experience and research that really quality service learning experiences build SEL. But what's also really interesting is that it's reciprocal, because SEL strengthens the ability of students to be more capable service providers. And the reciprocity between the two and the linkage between the two is really where we're driving those positive youth development outcomes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. So we're going to finish the presentation today. Now that we've laid the groundwork for how service learning fosters SEL, how SEL skills are necessary for a really powerful service learning project, we're going to finish with just going through quickly some examples for each of those ways to take action and how that might look in a virtual or a hybrid setting. We know it can be difficult sometimes to get started on what should I do for my project, or how can we incorporate service learning. And again, this year we have that additional challenge or opportunity to do things either in a hybrid setting or virtually. So we just want to give the opportunity to run through a couple quick examples that either you can adopt, or will either get the wheels turning for you and your students to create your own meaningful service learning project. Great. So again, these are the ways that your students are able to take action. Sarah highlighted in her example, they were doing awareness raising, volunteering, and resource collection. So once those students are understanding the local and global issues, then it's time to move to that step 2, to how are they going to take action. So the 6 primary ways, so advocacy, so educating others on topics that affect the public. So these are projects that aim to create awareness and inspire action on issues that impact your community. Awareness raising, focus the attention of others on a cause in the community or the world. Behavioral change, directly impacting individuals and helping them turn their bad habits or routines into positive ones. Fundraising, again, this is one that we traditionally think of when thinking of service. So working on broader issues, collecting donations, which is also similar to the resource collection, and volunteering again. So those are kind of the ones that you initially think of when you think of service learning. So those are the 6 ways that we can take action. And now we'll just go through a couple examples. So advocacy, so starting a virtual petition and sharing with members of your school, community, or local government. So this is a great one that can be done virtually, as we are now able to do petitions online. And again, an opportunity for your students to either create a new tool or utilize different technologies to create their service project. So our AP with We example, so advocating for improved prison conditions to state legislators for US government and politics. Awareness raising. So a lot was highlighted in Sarah's example. So any sort of virtual event or expo, so again, can be focused, our example here is focused on plastic reduction, but again, can be plug and play for whatever class you're teaching or what your students are passionate about. Another example is surveying the community to help local nonprofits combat homelessness for AP statistics. Behavioral change, so partnering with local environmental organizations to create virtual challenges, creating and employing behavior challenges through social media, dedicated website. So again, employing pledge forms to stick to this behavioral change for 30 days. And that can be used with AP Environmental Science or Psychology. Volunteering, again, that initial one that we always think of. So community cleanup in a safe way. And one of our other examples is actually app creation. So one thing we have seen with educators and students are the ways that students are able to volunteer their time from their home in creating different apps or volunteering online. So our example is creating an app to help people who suffer from anxiety and panic attacks. And that can be done with AP Computer Science. And finally, resource collection. So this one is really cool. So an upcycling of clothing that can reinvest funds into the social enterprise to support your local community. So the example can be used for environmental science or microeconomics.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joelle and Sarah. I think our hope here was today that, you know, you teachers have already taken a step forward because you're participating in AP with We Service and you care about bringing that community feel, making your students feel ownership, making them feel like they have an impact. So today we wanted to just show that by doing that, you're actually impacting their social and emotional learning, and how together they are really one. And that, I think Sarah said it best, which is that one impacts the other and the other impacts the other. So really, by participating in service learning, it's so much more than just looking at volunteer hours or, you know, an action at the food bank. It's really all together impacting your curriculum, your students, their growth, their social and emotional learning. So thank you so much for watching our presentation. Thank you for being part of AP with We Service and really just going above and beyond with your students. That's signing out from us. We're really excited, and thank you.